Hasbro announces a special SEC East version of its classic game Scrabble. It's just like the regular game, except with a few more L's thrown in the bag.
Aww, and we speak with the holidays around the corner to behavioral psychologist Jim Harbaugh, who explains how to manage our anger, and his big takeaway is, don't manage it at all. Just let it all out at any point you're feeling it, no matter the repercussions. It's all about you.
That's right. Kick that Christmas tree over.
Boom.
All that and more this week on Wake Up College Football. Oh my God. This is the last time we're doing this season. Hey.
A great year.
We'll be next week. We'll be doing a show, but it won't be this. It will be a little different for the playoff selection show. Mm-hmm. We'll probably do a little something over semifinals, national championship, all that.
Yep.
So much has changed. I mean, just from week to week. Last week when we sat here, Ed Orgeron had blown his chance at getting the LSU job. Just couldn't beat a bad Florida team. It was over. Last week when we sat here, things were fine at Oregon.
Things were
totally fine at Oregon.
Everything was just as it has been.
Yep.
And things were good.
One thing that has not changed week to week. Outside of Alabama, the rest of the SEC is a flaming disaster.
Ooh, it's not good.
Just think about how every team has had, within the last month or so, an opportunity to show its ass in a huge way. Florida, last night against Florida State, 0 third down conversions. That's great. That's wonderful. LSU against this Florida team. Arkansas against Missouri. Texas A&M against LSU. Auburn against Georgia. Georgia against Georgia Tech. Tennessee against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Pretty much every, unless you're Vanderbilt or Kentucky. And congratulations to those teams on big days and closing the season strong.
And should be very encouraged going into bowl season and 2017.
Unless you're those teams, everybody else in the SEC, with the exception of Alabama, has just looked totally flat and stupid. Ole Miss against Mississippi State.
I was going to say, the Oxford Investors Club
oh my God.
has a real nice lesson on return on investment in many ways, perhaps, within the Ole Miss program.
It's I think for a long time, the case that the SEC was the best conference in college football was an accurate one. And it did have to do with the depth of the conference. Right now, the head of the conference is huge. The rest of it is just withered away. Oh, it's
a lollipop. They are a lollipop. They have a big old head and just a little body.
And the stick is just filthy, covered in hair.
It's a hair stick.
It's a hair stick. Well, that's the grossest thing we'll say.
The SEC is not in a good place right now. I think it's fair to say, because especially their championship game has this much intrigue.
I don't think they're. No, I heard they're not doing it this year.
They're not doing it.
Yep.
Okay, they just canceled it.
No reason.
They're going to let kids drive around the field and go karts.
I don't think it's fair that Alabama gets a bye, but
You know what? It's good to be the king. It's good to be the king.
Let's talk about a better conference.
Let's talk about a better conference.
Let's talk about the Big Ten.
Let's do it.
Maybe one minor result that we should start the show by referencing.
Okay, so the silver medal game for the Big Ten East drew a number of viewers. And we'll get to that, hopefully, if we have time.
It could have been the gold medal game.
It could have been the gold medal, but it turns out. So yeah, let's talk Wisconsin, Minnesota. Let's just start with the Big Ten West, because why not? Wisconsin came back and won this game after starting slowly.
We'll get to Wisconsin, but let's talk about the game. Let's talk about the game. All right, so let's get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Michigan fans, Michigan coaches, Michigan players hated the officiating.
Yes, they did.
I think they have a case for hating certain parts of the officiating of this game.
Think that's reasonable?
Everybody said this, so this is not news to anybody. The officiating did not fumble the ball at the 1-yard line.
Right.
The officiating did not pack in the offense for most of the second half.
Did not throw back-breaking interceptions.
Right.
No.
Did not throw a tantrum on the sideline.
Did not.
To get Ohio
not.
State even closer to the goal line after one of those back-breaking interceptions. So
Michigan helped Ohio State merely as much, if not more, than the officials did.
Sure. Yeah. It was a real it was a real tripartite system.
Yes.
Ohio State did a little, Michigan did a little, the rest
officials did a little.
Everybody gets some. But let's be positive about Michigan for a second. Yeah. I was wildly impressed by Wilton Speight in this game.
Especially with him being wounded. Yeah.
Yes. And wounded in the sense that part of his body was broken.
Yeah, and spirit, it looked like at the end.
Yeah, that's true. He goes 15 of 20 for 141 yards in the first half. The rest of the game, not as good, but still 8 of 16 for 79. I think they got more than they possibly could have expected out of Wilton Speight.
And I might argue, even with the interceptions, he might have been clearly the best quarterback on the field.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that there is a reasonable case to be made for that. The problem was that Michigan had this huge field position advantage all game.
Mm-hmm.
They were stomping on Ohio State on the defensive side of the ball in the first half.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't ever really pull away. They let Ohio State hang around, as hackneyed as that is to say.
Yeah. And this was not a game, as good as the defenses were in the open field, instinct-wise, picking off passes, whatever, everything that each of these defenses did was pretty much great.
Yeah.
For as great as that was, the offensive line play in this game was putrid. Ohio State struggled a ton against Michigan's front, and Michigan's offensive line was constantly under fire by Ohio State. And listen, they're going up against NFL-caliber defenses and defensive fronts, but still, over the course of this game, I don't know if it was the coaches adjusting, I don't know if it's quarterbacks, sliding protections, whatever it was, the offensive lines were completely outmaneuvered.
Yeah, Ohio State finishes this game 3 of 16 on third down.
Yeah.
And wins.
Yeah.
JT Barrett, as a passer, 3.1 yards per drop back. He got sacked 8 times in this game. That does not include any of those sack yardage.
Right.
4.2 yards a carry on 30 attempts. That does include the sack yardage. So he did at least move the ball for them. But in terms of like what you were doing as from the quarterback position, this team, I mean, this has been true of this team for the last month and a half. They have not really figured out how to consistently and effectively pass the ball.
Yeah, and a fun year, by the way, because of huge games being decided by big kicks. Tyler Durbin missing early, a guppy, and the game-time field goal. It wasn't that far, but listen, that's a nice little redemption story.
Yeah, it's nice that we didn't have to. The story of this game was not kicker blows.
Tyler Durbin,
easy game for Ohio State.
Yes. So now this puts Ohio State squarely in a conversation of
a very weird conversation.
A very strange conversation. They have a huge win to finish the season. They will not be in the Big Ten championship game, but there is a very clear and strong argument that they're one of the best 4 teams in the nation.
Right.
But then it will come down to what happens in the Big Ten championship game and who wins, and if there is a cogent, clear argument that they should be a top 4 team.
So I asked you this before we started filming. Who do you, if you're the selection committee right now, and your goal is to find a place for Ohio State in the playoff, who do you want to win the Big Ten championship?
I assume it has to be Wisconsin, because you can point to Wisconsin's non-conference with the win against LSU.
Yep.
You can point to the fact that Wisconsin, they've been to a bunch of Rose Bowls. They've built up a huge fan base and a national reputation. They're a power running team. They're, the cheese, the heartland. It's Wisconsin. And the fact that they lose to Ohio State, they have a clear path to saying, well, Ohio State beat this conference champion, and I think it was in Camp Randall, I believe.
I think that's right.
And that they've clearly improved over the course of the season, and they finished the season with a huge win. I don't know if they've improved over the course of the season consistently, but I think that's the case.
Okay. That's probably right. The bigger problem, I think, is going to be if Penn State not only wins, but wins convincingly.
Right.
Then I really don't know what you do, because Penn State, over their last 5 games after the Ohio State game, they've held every opponent below 2.7 yards a carry.
Right.
They have allowed 3 total touchdowns on the ground in that span. And on the ground themselves, or through the air themselves, rather, they are averaging 9.1 yards a passing attempt versus Power 5 teams. That's 7th in the nation. So I kind of take issue with the idea that, clearly Ohio State is one of the top 4 teams in the country. Only in the sense that, why is Penn State clearly not? Given what Penn State has done over the course of the season, given the way they closed out...
2 new coordinators and a head coach on the hot seat.
They just closed out a Michigan State team that Ohio State struggled with. And I understand, here's the thing. If the selection committee's goal is to sort of give us a rubric for this is what you do, they want us to believe that winning a conference championship is important.
Check.
They want us to believe that head-to-head wins are important.
Penn State, check.
If you lose, the logic is lose early.
Right.
They want us to believe non-conference scheduling is important. Pitt and Temple, while maybe don't have the name cachet of some people you can put on your non-conference schedule, those are quality teams.
Yes, Pitt is a team that beat what looks like a playoff team, and Temple is a team that is in position to win their conference.
Right.
Right, an impressive conference.
Right. So that's not a nothing non-conference schedule.
Right.
Given all of that,
Yeah.
and given that we're not talking about, if you really want to get into the weeds here and say, oh, they only care about money and
Right.
fan bases, Penn State fans are around. You know this. You've had these uncomfortable conversations
you have.
before. So like, I legitimately don't understand why the fixation is that, like, Ohio State's definitely in. It doesn't matter what happens in the
Right.
Big Ten.
Well, here's an extension of that. Oklahoma blows out Oklahoma State in the Bedlam game.
Let's say.
So
yes.
Oklahoma finishes their season trouncing West Virginia and Oklahoma State, the clear two best teams on their conference slate. So now they're going to be 10-2 with impressive wins over the best two teams in their conference without a conference championship game. Washington kills Colorado. Washington wins the Pac-12.
Right.
So then you have, and Clemson kills Virginia Tech, or handily beats Virginia Tech. So you have Alabama, Clemson, Washington, and Oklahoma as the clear conference champions. Ohio State beat Oklahoma in Norman.
Yep.
What do you do then?
I mean, I don't think the Big 12's getting in.
Okay, so the Big 12 is out, no matter what.
Yes.
In this example,
I think the Big 12 suffers too much from they were so bad in non-conference play across the board. They didn't have enough good teams throughout most of the year. And they don't have the conference championship game. That's the other thing. If the conference championship game is not going to matter for the Big 10, why the hell is the Big 12 twisting itself into knots to get one?
It's true.
It's totally, it really is bizarre to me. And I don't have a dog in this fight. I think Ohio State is a great team. But I will say this. Imagine if this was the BCS and you had to pick the number 2 team to play this year. How the hell would you do that?
You pray.
That would be impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a Washington versus Clemson argument?
But if you go by the playoff committee and where they are right now, it's Ohio State still. Right?
I mean, the committee is different than the computers.
The committee is different than the computers, absolutely. But I don't think the computers would dislike an Ohio State team that went on the road and killed Oklahoma.
Yeah. Okay. God,
and has one loss. That's one loss came on a blocked field goal.
Ugh, you're making my head hurt.
I'm just saying.
Right. And I'm very worried
as much as we're all like the playoffs should be 6 teams, 8 teams, whatever. Thank God it's not 2. Thank God it's, because I honestly don't. You would be screwing just between Clemson and Washington. If they both win their conference championship games, you would be screwing a very good team out of a spot.
Absolutely.
To even play for it.
Absolutely. Where do you want to stay in the Big Ten? You want to talk? I mean, Wisconsin beat Minnesota. They came back. Penn State looked super impressive against Michigan State.
Yeah.
Anything else in the Big Ten to you?
Here's what I really like about Wisconsin.
Northwestern won that hat.
Wisconsin is 113th in the nation in passing attempts per game.
Right.
They're 11th in rushes per game. They have not had a game in which they threw for more yardage than they ran since October 1st.
Okay.
Wisconsin is unabashedly Big Ten.
Yes.
They can't throw the ball that well. They don't want to throw the ball that often.
Right.
So they just give it to their running backs and just say, all right, we'll chew up here, 240 yards on the ground. We win,
This is who we are.
Win like 28-14 or something.
Yeah. I would
That's
also
great.
argue Paul Chryst is visually the most Big Ten coach.
I'm really, he's up there. He really is up there. I'm really interested in the Big Ten championship game only because it matches all these interesting strengths. Penn State has thrown the ball very efficiently. Nobody's thrown for 300 yards against Wisconsin this season. Nobody's done it.
That's incredible.
That pass defense has given up 8 touchdowns, has 21 interceptions to their name.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, we already said Penn State can stop the run with the best of them. It's going to be a brutal dogfight.
Do you know who is leading the nation in yards per completion? Not yards per attempt. So yards per completion is a little bit of a less accurate animal.
I mean, I feel like Florida's got to be in this because they don't complete many passes.
But when they do.
So when they do, no, I have no idea.
It's Trace McSorley.
Wow.
At like 22 yards per
Oh
completion.
my God.
Like, he's having a ridiculous season.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's what he had yesterday. I don't know. Whatever it is, he is leading the country in yards per completion.
I want to pop over to Clemson real quick.
Okay.
Not a competitive game.
No.
And we just want to highlight that for a second because Clemson, 2 punts, 1 turnover, 41 first downs, and 8 offensive touchdowns. They demolished a South Carolina team who, at the very least, you can say has been in more interesting games than you thought they might have been this year. This was not one of them.
Clemson is also the only team with the combination of quarterback and total depth and level of talent in this conversation that could hang with Alabama potentially.
I
I don't believe in Ohio State and J.T. Barrett.
If you're just looking at the numbers right now, Clemson looks remarkably similar. Basically, this Clemson team looks a lot like last year's Clemson team, with the exception that they're not quite as good at running the ball, although they're not that far off because they weren't an amazing rushing team last year, and they're sloppier.
Yes.
Those are not two great ways to be different, but they still have the capability when they are firing on all cylinders. I mean, I think you're right. They do have to play. They have to play their A+ game to give Alabama a game. But this pass defense against Jalen Hurts, I mean, Jalen Hurts has been excellent for Alabama. He's also made his share of mistakes.
Yes.
And if we get a Clemson-Alabama game anywhere in the playoff, they are going to cause him a lot of stress.
They are the only team, especially now with Washington's injuries up front, that can force Jalen Hurd into many 3rd and 7 attempts, throwing attempts. And that's where we stand now. With Washington, we've only seen them play against one blue chip defense, and they lost.
Now, you said Jalen Hurd, not Jalen.
Oh, Jalen Hurts.
That's okay. That
me.
happens, but let's use that as a seamless segue.
Woo!
Tennessee lost to Vanderbilt.
Yes, they did. And you know what? Against a really good Vanderbilt defense, and this is going to be totally lost because the season is going to be considered such a disappointment. Josh Dobbs had a ridiculously good game.
Josh Dobbs has been fine over the last month.
They haven't played anybody, but the
defense is totally fallen apart.
Yeah, it has.
They've given up 600+ yards in their last 3 games. 4 opponents against Tennessee this year have either run or passed for 400 yards.
Yeah.
That is that's not like a leak in the dam. The dam fell over.
Kyle Shurmur completely lit up this Tennessee defense yesterday. And do you know who his offensive coordinator is? It's Andy Ludwig. It is Andy Ludwig. And as an Oregon fan, I do not have a good experience, and I do not have good memories of Andy Ludwig. And even that offense lit Tennessee up.
I mean, it was if you are a fan of a quote-unquote pedigree SEC East team yesterday, it was bad.
Not good.
Florida fan? Nope. Looked terrible. Terrible against Florida
I know, you're getting choked up.
Yeah. Georgia gagged away a 2-touchdown lead against Georgia Tech, because they refused to just manage the clock well. Finished, they're what, 7-5?
Right.
Great personnel decision there.
Wait, hold on. Let's see. How did Nick Saban assistants do yesterday?
Not great.
Kirby Smart, Jim McElwain. Lane Kiffin got his name.
Lane Kiffin might get the Oregon job, so there's that.
So maybe he had a good day.
Let's go to the Pac-12, buddy.
Yeah, let's go to the Pac-12. Where do you want to start? You want to start with Colorado winning the South?
Yes, sure. Let's do that.
Thank you, God.
Let's start with Colorado winning the South. I don't know what to make of this Colorado team. I like them a lot.
Yeah.
I think Cephalifau is effective, if not dazzling. I think their defense is. They force turnovers. That's really what the defense comes down to.
They have 2 really good corners. Their secondary is very, very good.
Yeah. Their run game is not.
No, it's
their
not.
run game. They go for 2.8 yards a carry against Utah. Utah, perfectly fine defense. So it's not.
The pass defense isn't good, but they do play the run really well.
They only have 14 runs of 20+ yards this year. That ranks 84th in the nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Colorado has 2 good receivers in Shea Fields and Devin Ross, and there's other talent skill position-wise. Philip Lindsay's a pretty good running back, but I don't think their offensive line is great. And Seyfo Liufau is a one-man warrior who has survived.
When he's healthy, he does what Colorado needs him to. Not a whole lot more, but that's
They went through his injuries last night, and it's a miracle that he's walking.
Like an operation game.
He has parts on him that who knows where they're from. So Colorado is in a position to be very competitive against Washington.
Absolutely.
I don't fully believe that they have the ability on both sides of the ball to hang with Washington, just because Washington is so good offensively when Jake Browning gets into a rhythm.
I think the blueprint is Colorado leans on their pass defense, which is one of the best in the nation.
Yes.
Plays the field position game well, turns that into enough points that it kind of gets Washington off kilter.
Right.
But I think if it's just, we're going to try to stay in a scoring battle with Washington, no.
If they can keep it close into the second half, which is totally doable with that defense, and with Seyfo Liufau, who throws a nice deep ball. Washington is not a very good second half team.
Right.
Just in terms of what they've been able to do right out of the gate.
Right.
We saw them struggle in the second half, obviously against USC, against Arizona.
Even against Wazoo.
And against Wazoo, they were, everybody would love to score 28 first quarter points.
Yeah.
But yes, they're a team that they have trouble sometimes sustaining success over a game.
Yeah. It feels like Colorado.
Against the Oregon Ducks, it's a different story.
It feels like Colorado needs to hold Washington under 35 points to win that game.
Yes, absolutely. They need that Utah playbook. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not in Seattle. I mean, the Pac-12 championship.
Now. Since we're all in on playoff nonsense, if Colorado beats Washington, where are they in the playoff? Are they out? Do they need help? Did they automatically jump into Washington's spot? What are we talking here?
They need style points.
Okay.
It needs to be a 35-14 type win for Colorado. In the way that Ohio State got in it with style points with Cardale Jones, where they seemed like they weren't going to make it in, but then they beat Wisconsin like 52-0 or 52-3 or whatever the case. And the Big Ten championship game needs to be ugly. It needs to be like 10-9 in overtime or whatever. And it needs to be that kind of ugly, a missed extra point deciding the Big Ten championship game. That's what it needs to be. We're just like,
if you just willed that into being, you are going to get so much anger.
I know. I'm so sorry. We can't have the situation be that Penn State or Wisconsin win and don't get into the playoff because of Colorado.
Right.
I mean, Colorado scheduled Michigan in the non-conference, and they were competitive with Seifa Lufau. They have impressive wins, but they needed to pull it off against USC to really get into this conversation in earnest.
They also suffer from the fact that the Pac-12 has had a really big drop-off this year in terms of like consistent depth. You have
Colorado needs to be.
Colorado's good. Utah's good. Washington. I'm being kind of generous.
Yeah.
Washington's good. Wazoo is in sort of Utah territory, but they lost to an FCS school and Boise State.
And Stanford has ascended to fine.
Stanford has ascended to fine. Everybody, and USC is good.
Yeah, USC is very good.
But like UCLA, 4-8.
Yeah.
The Arizona schools, don't watch
God
them.
awful. Oregon,
better than
super
that.
awful.
Oregon, not great. Oregon State, improving.
But still a 4-win team.
One of those wins.
Also, Colorado, if they do have a style point win, got to be big Virginia Tech fans.
Oh, boy.
Big Virginia Tech fans.
Boy.
Oregon.
Mark Helfrich.
Yeah.
Just you know what? I just want you to take the floor.
So we're recording this
talk about your feelings.
late morning.
There's a clock right there.
Oh, heck yeah. We're recording this late morning, Sunday morning, and he is, as of my knowledge, still the coach of the Oregon Ducks.
Yes, Oregon is in a weird space right now where they are rumoredly setting up a coaching search, even though they have not rid themselves of their current coach.
Right. I would imagine it would be early week.
But that's like shopping for a house, right? Like you don't sell your house and then start looking for a new one. It's fine. It's totally normal. You're underwater on Mark Helfrich.
I was going to say, you got to paint over a lot of your Helfrich house.
We're gonna burn down Mark Helfrich for the insurance.
Okay, they're going to sell it as a lot.
Yeah.
I think if I were to guess, I think that the coaching search is going to go a lot like Oregon basketball did, where they're going to take their time and they're going to find somebody that within the industry is super respected as sort of a tactician and either a recruiter or somebody who has a Rolodex to hire a really strong staff. So my personal preference right now is to hire somebody on the younger side who has head coaching experience and maybe a defensive background who can hire somebody.
You just said PJ Fleck.
NFL wide receiver PJ Fleck. Somebody like Derek Mason is somebody to me with his West Coast experience at Vandy.
Sure.
Listen, Lord knows Oregon needs academic help, and the APR situation is not very good at Oregon. So you have Derek Mason, who's recruited the West Coast. He has experience in the Pac-12, and just this season, he has beaten at least 3 teams who are clearly more talented in Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee.
Georgia, I dispute, but okay, yeah.
They're more talented.
Sure, I'd still dispute
than Vanderbilt.
that.
Okay,
I'm just being mean. I'm just being mean.
You're just being mean.
Sorry.
So right now, his stock is probably as high as it's ever been.
Probably, yes.
Yes. So Derek Mason would be a name that I would be intrigued by. That's where I'm at.
This is how I know Oregon hasn't done a coaching search in a while, because you just said that you think the best thing Oregon can do right now is poach.
I mean, Mike McIntyre would be a really good hire.
Yeah, that is, I will say, I am a little surprised that Mike McIntyre is not generating more.
I would imagine he's looking
in coaching circles.
In the eastern direction.
Okay.
Like a Tennessee, Ole Miss direction.
Okay.
And, he's from, I think, Tennessee, coached at Ole Miss. He played at Vandy.
Yeah. There are a lot of, look, because I'm evil and twisted and I like things to go wrong, there are a lot of jobs that feel like they could come open just because the right booster watched a game yesterday and was like, nah. Done with it. Like, I get what Hugh Freeze has done at Ole Miss.
Right.
It's very impressive. That team, they have the Texas A&M win. Other than that, over the last 2 months, what? What do they got?
First half win against Bama, first half win against Florida State.
Tennessee, what's their best win?
Yeah.
Florida?
Virginia Tech.
A Virginia Tech team where they had to recover like 7 fumbles to beat them.
Yes. That's where we're at now. Another situation we should mention. The Texas Longhorns have a new coach.
They do. Congratulations to you. I'm not going to congratulate Texas.
Okay.
I'm going to congratulate Texas media for effectively killing any chance LSU had of getting Tom Herman. It was beautiful how orchestrated it was, where they just like, oh, hey, look, there's this report. He's going to take the LSU job. Might want to give him a call. I don't know. Definitely his agent didn't slip me this information, so you will go and offer him a boatload of money right this second.
And fire your coach officially and hire the new coach within like an hour and a half.
Yeah. Good. At least Charlie Strong had the decency to not beat TCU, or not even look that good.
Right.
TCU,
That's true.
And not
make the decision.
His own misery.
Yeah.
Hey, how are things going at his old school?
Not great. Great.
Lost to Kentucky in an SEC East day of misery.
Yeah.
Kentucky beat Louisville. A thing that if you had said a month ago, you would have been laughed out of the room.
Yeah.
And rightly so. But Kentucky has pulled out of a very weird tailspin to start the season. Yeah. Did
they finish second in the SEC East?
They finished tied for second.
Tied for second. Okay.
And if it were up to me, they would be playing in Atlanta against Alabama. I think they deserve it, and I would be happy for them.
It's certainly
to get the
more
opportunity.
interesting.
It's way more interesting.
Yeah. So Steven Johnson throws all over what had been up to this point a pretty good Louisville defense.
Yep.
And for his part, Lamar Jackson, I think he turned the ball over 4 times. He has not had a particularly good November.
It's been a rough turn.
Between Houston and Wake and now Kentucky.
I mean, I still think this just means the Heisman race is going to be more interesting.
Okay.
I have a problem looking at his numbers and his accomplishments over the season as a whole.
Right.
You know, he didn't beat Clemson, but he certainly looked great against them. This is the same thing with the playoffs, to be honest. Right. I find it always a little tricky when we cherry pick and say, oh, they look bad at the end of the season. And that's not true of anybody else. Like, you know, if you want to say Dalvin Cook should be in the Heisman conversation now.
Right.
Dalvin Cook had a real slow start to the year.
He did.
If you want to say Christian McCaffrey should be back, he had a real slow start to the year. I think the Heisman is going to have to face facts that there is nobody from a clearly dominant top 6 team this year that they can take. Who would it be at this point?
It's true. Statistically, Baker Mayfield, they're not top 6.
Right.
But he and Dede Westbrook.
But all of Oklahoma's stats have to be discounted, if you ask me, by the fact that they're effectively an air raid team. They're a Mike Leach team right now, an old Mike Leach team, because those teams can play better defense now. Wazoo plays better defense than Oklahoma does at this juncture. So then
are you giving more credence to Joe Mixon and what he's done this season as a dual threat?
If you want. I mean, there are cases to be made for a lot of these guys, but I still think what Lamar Jackson's done over the course of the season, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong all the time.
I would say the clear trophy race that has the highest level of intrigue
is the Heisman Trophy.
I'm going to look right here. Is your Heisman Trophy, your 2016 Heisman Trophy race, which I think the ballot will be available online when?
Hopefully today.
Within the next 24 hours, certainly.
And this is the first time we're announcing this.
Yeah.
This year, the fans get a vote.
Yes, you do.
This year, if you are a fan of the Heisman Trophy, you are part of one conglomerate fan vote. Your voice will be heard. A lot of interesting names in the mix this year.
Yes.
Brian O'Neill had a pass attempt yesterday for Pitt.
Did he really?
It didn't work.
Okay.
And Pitt fans got a little worried that this was going to somehow
I thought you said for a pick. For Pitt. Okay.
No. They were worried it was going to ding him.
No.
But no.
It's moment specific, and he has the moments. I mean, it's Brian O'Neill versus Brian O'Neill on a certain level.
Sure, there's that. But there's and there are a lot of other good plays out there.
Yes.
So I don't think there's a clear... the nice thing is you're not a voter.
I'm not a voter.
I'm not a voter. So we're not tipping our hand, and I honestly don't know who's going to
I have zero idea.
This year.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
I have zero idea, but do vote on the Heisman Trophy when you see the ballot appear on SBNation.com. And if there are any plays, if anybody's watching this and you're a fan of a smaller school,
if you have
D1, D2, D3, whatever.
You have an hour, 2 hours maybe to tweet me at Celebrity Hot Tub. And
Celebrity Hot Tub, tweet him and send him a play of a big man doing something with the ball.
What else? Oh, since we're talking about Pitt.
Yeah.
Pitt ran 59 plays yesterday and scored 76 points.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Pitt Syracuse was an absolute points explosion. FBS record, I believe.
Yeah.
It's the plays part that really, because Syracuse ran almost 90 plays, and if you run 90 plays and the other team's not stopping you, you're going to score a lot of points. How you score, and only 7 of these points came on defense or special teams. So Pitt got 69 points, on 59 plays. That's stupid. They in the second half they just had drive chart after drive chart. There's just like 1 play, 2 plays,
and I believe
2 plays, 1 play, 3 plays.
It was only 19 of those plays were passes. Nate Peterman only threw 19 passes against Syracuse, and it was Syracuse scoring. I think it was 27 points in the fourth quarter, 61 overall, with their backup quarterback Zach Mahoney. So. This was sort of like how there's like counter programming, like if you don't want to watch the Super Bowl, hey, E is running a Love Actually marathon or something like that. This was the counter programming to Michigan, Ohio State.
Die Hard is on for 8 hours.
If you don't like teams just punting repeatedly and handing the ball to each other and missing field goals, just flip on over to Syracuse.
You may like Pitt Syracuse. I also want to talk briefly about USF's own Quentin Flowers.
Yes.
Quentin Flowers is awesome.
Yes, he is.
And nobody talks about him outside of USF media. He's finishing the regular season with over 1,400 rushing yards, over 2,500 passing yards. His last 7 games, he's accounted for 25 touchdowns through the air and on the ground.
Yep.
I just wanted to get out there. I think part of the charm of our show is that we try to find the guys and the teams that people aren't talking about.
I believe USF is also the only team in the nation, maybe the only not Power 5, but the only FBS team to score 30 points in every one of their games.
That's great.
Yeah.
USF has had a great season.
Yep.
I'm sure they wish they could have had at least one game go a different way.
As we slowly shift to becoming an only AAC show.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Navy. You see how many times they punted in the month of November? 2 times! Navy punted twice. They dropped another 70 points. I believe, did they do that last week too? They've scored so many points. They're going to play in the American Championship game a week before playing Army.
Yeah.
So Navy in just another incredible season. I think they'll play next week to win 10 games once again.
Yeah.
Kendu Matalolo.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
Bowl eligible.
Absolutely.
Nick Rolovich has done fantastic things with that Hawaii team that has a lot of inherent disadvantages, does not have a lot of money, gets to 6 and 7, and
how much did they travel to start the season? Like 28,000 miles.
They basically hijacked a plane and flew it across the world 8 times. Anybody else? Indiana, way to beat Purdue, barely.
Beat Purdue. That's the Oaken bucket. That's the Oaken bucket.
It's
Congratulations.
The one that looks like a bunch of refrigerator magnets fell on a old time.
Boise State has an Air Force problem.
Sure, don't we all?
So there's that, don't we all?
Don't we all?
Outside of that, I don't know if there was anything else that specifically jumps out.
Darius Geis, I think, looked excellent.
Leonard Fournette had the rushing record for 1 month.
Yeah, it didn't last very long. I mean, granted, it was against Texas A&M, and that team is kind of...
not a good place.
Arkansas, pretty blah end to the season.
Weird season. Unexpectedly, putrid. And they were in the first playoff ranking, I believe. So they lose to Missouri, Missouri improved offense over the course of the season. Drew Lock had some nice moments. I'm trying to think of any other team. Oh, Western Michigan.
Rowing
Rowing that boat past Toledo.
Undefeated boat rowing.
Yes.
Will continue to get no love whatsoever from the playoff committee. No. But it basically should get the New Year's Six game, right?
It should get the New Year's Six game with Boise's loss. We'll see what happens in the American. It'll be a cool story for Navy, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
Western Michigan, 12-0. They beat decisively the other best team in the conference in Toledo. Best quarterback, perhaps, other than Zach Terrell. Great year for Western.
This was also a year where we saw one team start 6-0 and finish 6-6, and one team start 0-6 and finish 6-6. The second team on that list, Miami of Ohio. So congratulations on digging the deepest hole possible and pulling out of it. Like that, just on degree of difficulty alone.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how pretty it looks. It's just sort of like, wow, he jumped off of that and lived? That's pretty cool.
USC starts the season out 1-3 and finishes 8-0.
Yeah, that is, I think, if you're an LSU fan who feels sort of iffy about Ed Orgeron right now, look to USC. USC, gave the job to an interim guy. Everybody was sort of like, what are you doing? You're a name brand program. You can get somebody better than this. But the players liked him. He made one very, very good coordinator hire.
Pulled the trigger pretty early.
And also, he figured out how to, he made a good decision to switch quarterbacks early on.
He did. Yep. Absolutely.
So that's sort of the model right now, is that Clay Helton was everybody, a month into the season, we thought this was a terrible mistake, but he navigated the waters effectively, and no, USC didn't win the Pac-12 South.
Right.
But I think their season ended up far better than
There's a clear argument that they were the clear best team in the Pac-12 South by the end of the season.
And now they're going to have a top 10 ranking to start next season, and then they'll blow that.
At the very least.
So they got that.
So that's the USC way.
But I also just realized last night, talking to our colleague Richard Johnson, Florida plays Michigan to start the season next year. So super excited.
Offense. That's all I got.
That's all I got.
All right. We will respond to some comments on the internet. Thank you, everybody, for watching all season long. It has been a joy. It has been a pleasure. It has been wonderful not doing the show at 1 a.m, which we did last season.
Good choices.
Great choices. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Respond, keep commenting. We'll continue this conversation online. For that beautiful gentleman over there, Ryan Nanni, my name is Dan Rubenstein, and we'll see you next week to discuss playoff teams.